Sarah Marie Johnson. Sarah Marie Johnson was just like any other 16-year-old girl living in Bellevue, Idaho. When Sarah started dating Bruno Santos, 19, a rift grew between her and her parents. Bruno had a history of drugs and violence, and when they became aware of this, Diane and Alan told her to take a break from the relationship. But she disobeyed and instead spent the night at Bruno's. When Alan discovered this, he turned up at the front door and demanded that Bruno stay away from Sarah or he'd contact the police about his shady past. He then took his daughter home and grounded her. But Sarah was fed up with her parents' interference. So at 6 a.m. the next day, she opened her dad's gun case and pulled out a rifle. Then she crept into her parents' room while her mom was asleep and dad was showering. First, she aimed the rifle at her mother's head and pulled the trigger. The shot alerted Alan, and he rushed out of the bathroom in a bathrobe. He saw his dead wife in the bed, and then spotted Sarah holding a gun. He begged her not to fire, but she shot her dad in the chest, and he died. Sarah then ran over to a neighbor acting distressed, and they called 911. When police investigated, they found a bloody pink bathrobe and a latex glove with gunshot residue in a bin outside the house that contained Alan, Diane, and Sarah's DNA, implicating her in the crime. She was found guilty of murder and was jailed for 2 life sentences. Stacy Lenert. This is Stacy Lenert, and in this case, she was a victim until she did the unthinkable. According to Stacy Lenert, her father started molesting her when she was in 3rd grade. It quickly developed into full-on sexual intercourse, usually when her dad was so drunk that her mom would kick him out of her bedroom. He would often perform oral sex on Stacy, which sometimes brought her to orgasm, adding another queasy layer of shame and confusion. He also became violent toward her when she resisted his advances. Even when her mom found Stacy's blood-streaked underwear or heard her crying while down in the basement with her father, she did nothing. When her dad began abusing her younger daughter, Christy, in 1990, Stacy decided it was finally high time to kill Daddy. On July 4th, she grabbed a rifle and shot at him while he was asleep, hitting his collarbone. He bolted awake, unaware he'd been shot, and yelled at Stacy to call 911. When he started berating her for taking so long to make the call, she says she thought to herself, he doesn't deserve to live, and shot him fatally in the head. In 2009, weighing Christie's abuse at her father's hands, Missouri's governor commuted her life sentence to 20 years. She was released after serving 18. Thomas Jr. The Gilbert family were renowned for their self-made financial success in New York City. Thomas Gilbert Sr. ran a successful hedge fund. He lived with his daughter and wife, Shelley, while his son Thomas Gilbert Jr. lived in his own apartment nearby. Unlike his father, Thomas Jr. struggled to hold down a steady job and had known very few successes outside of surfing. He suffered from depression, anxiety, paranoia, and obsessive-compulsive disorder. And despite taking medication, his parents desperately wished for him to seek professional help. They agreed to cut their son's allowance in an effort to force him to seek psychiatric help. But instead of complying, Thomas bought a gun via Facebook. When he turned up at his parents' house for a visit, his mom Shelley hoped it was a sign of good news. Thomas Jr. told her to leave him alone with his dad so they could talk about business. She left the room, but became worried after putting her ear to the door and hearing silence. She found her husband on his back, his hand covering a gun on his chest, placed there in a clumsy attempt at a staged suicide. Thomas Jr. was found guilty of second-degree murder, as well as 2 counts of criminal possession of a weapon. Daniel Chapman. When dinner was served in the Chapman household, son Daniel, 22, told his parents he couldn't come to the table because he was in the middle of a computer game. Frustrated dad, Stephen, 56, told his son to look for somewhere else to rent the next day. He then stormed into the family's office in their Sydney home and turned off the internet modem. Afterwards, he went into Daniel's room and tried to remove the cables from the computer. But Daniel, who collected medieval weapons as a hobby, picked up a hunting knife from under his bed and stabbed his dad in the back. After removing the 14-centimeter blade, he went to see his mom, Elaine. "I stabbed him," he told her coldly. Elaine then tried to call an ambulance, but accidentally dialed 999, the British emergency number, where she's originally from. 10 minutes later, a neighbor reported the stabbing. 3 ambulances arrived, but Stephen died from blood loss. Daniel Chapman pleaded guilty to manslaughter and was jailed for at least 3 years, noting his autism spectrum disorder and his momentary lapse in being unable to control himself. Jasmine Richardson. Little Jasmine Richardson of the Canadian burg of Medicine Hat, Alberta, was only 12 years old when she fell in love with a 23-year-old man named Jeremy Steinke, who allegedly claimed to be a 300-year-old werewolf who loved the taste of human blood. Naturally, Jasmine's family did not approve, so naturally Jeremy and some friends watched the film Natural Born Killers, in which a pair of gun-toting, love-struck goofballs murder the girl's parents. Hours later, on that evening in April 2006, Jeremy and Jasmine would leave her parents and her little brother Jacob dead from stabbing and slashing. Her father had been so severely gutted, there was almost no blood left in his body when police found him. Both Jeremy and Jasmine were found guilty of 3 counts of murder. Jasmine is thought to be the youngest person ever convicted of murder in Canada. Due to her age at the time of the murders, she received a maximum 10-year sentence, of which she served only 4 years before her release. Jeremy will be in prison for the rest of his life, which, since he's a werewolf, could be forever. Tyler Hadley. For an entire week, teenager Tyler Hadley had been telling friends he was throwing a party at his parents' house while they were out of town for the weekend. Many of his mates didn't believe him, since his dad, Blake 54, and mom, Mary Jo 47, had been increasingly strict with him for the past few months. Soon, more than 60 teens had piled into the Hadley home in Port St. Lucie, Florida, most of whom were strangers to Tyler. When friends asked Tyler where his parents had gone, he told each one a different story. As the night went on, he became more reflective. By around 1 a.m., he told his friend Michael, "I killed my parents." Michael didn't believe it, so Tyler led him to the master bedroom, where there were traces of blood on the door. He unlocked it, and Michael spotted a pile of blood-soaked towels, and underneath, a thick white leg. Tyler explained to Michael what had happened. Shortly before 5 p.m., he'd hit his parents' phone so they couldn't call for help. He then took 3 pills of ecstasy, listened to a song to psych himself up, and then found a claw hammer in the garage. He stood behind his mom while she worked at the computer, before he raised the claw end of the hammer and brought it down on her head. When she screamed, Tyler's dad ran out of the master bedroom, and nothing could have prepared him for what he saw. "Why?" he repeated, as Tyler turned on his dad and beat him to death too. When it was over, he wrapped his parents in towels and dragged their corpses to the master bedroom. Then he started the cleanup. It took Tyler 3 hours to hide the incriminating evidence in the bedroom with the bodies. Then he took a shower. Michael was in shock listening to the story. Michael, who'd seen the bodies, called Crime Stoppers the moment he left, and the police returned to the house. Tyler Hadley was arrested and later convicted of murdering his parents. He was sentenced to life in prison. That was it for today's video. We hope you like it. If you want to see more interesting videos, then make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the like button.